The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory be to you, O Lord.
Fixing his eyes on his disciples, Jesus said, "How happy are you who are poor? Yours is the kingdom of God. Happy you who are hungry now, you shall be satisfied. Happy you who weep now, you shall laugh. Happy are you when people hate you, drive you out, abuse you, denounce your name as criminal on account of the Son of Man. Rejoice when that day comes and dance for joy, for then your reward will be great in heaven. This was the way their ancestors treated the prophets. But alas for you who are rich, you are having your consolation now. Alas for you who have your fill now, you shall go hungry. Alas for you who laugh now, you shall mourn and weep. Alas for you when the world speaks well of you." This was the way their ancestors treated the false prophets. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Please be seated. Our text today is from Luke chapter 6, verse 20 to 26. Luke chapter 6, verses 20 to 26. Please open your Bibles. So, my dear sisters and brothers, if St. Matthew had the Sermon on the Mount, which we have studied earlier, chapter 5, 6, and 7 of Matthew's Gospel, Luke has something called the Sermon on the Plain. It's called the Sermon on the Plain literally because he's not on a mountain, but he is on the plains of Galilee, where he preaches this Sermon on the Mount. And there's a stark difference between the two. Matthew's Gospel, if you remember, was all of 3 chapters, 5, 6, and 7. Luke's Sermon on the Plain is all of about 29 verses, and we will be talking about this Sermon on the Plain today right up till Saturday evening, where we will come to verse 49 and end it. Now, this account of Luke, the Sermon on the Plain, is the second major policy statement of Jesus' ministry. You heard the first when we began the Gospel of Luke in chapter 4, verses 14 to 30. Remember, Jesus went into the synagogue, and there they gave him the scroll of the prophet Isaiah, and he picked the verses. Remember, they gave him the text, he picked the verses, and he pronounced that the Spirit of God was upon him, that he had come to bring good news to the poor. This is very key. Remember, as I told you, while Jesus has come for all, he has very clearly a preferential option in the Gospel of Luke for the poor. And you will hear this again and again. For the poor, for widows, for the marginalized. So to those poor who he proclaimed the good news in chapter 4, verses 14 to 30, now in chapter 6, verse 20 to 26 and forward till 49, to those same poor now, he will give them a set of attitudes. I don't know whether you'll recall, but when we did the Sermon on the Mount of Matthew's Gospel, remember I gave you a key to remember. I said Jesus first gives us identity. He says we are his disciples. And then he gave us behavior. He gives us the attitudes or the beatitudes. And then he gave us examples. You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. In Luke's Gospel, the identity is already set. It is the disciple, as I will explain, who chooses to be poor before the Lord. And now to those disciples, the set of attitudes of poverty are given. Please don't misunderstand the Beatitudes in Luke, or please don't justify it even more for people to be morose and very sad about religion and faith and not smile in church and not clap and not look joyful. You've got the bull by its tail if that's the way you're going to go, if you listen to it. So I need to explain this to you. So clearly in Luke's Gospel, Jesus is setting an agenda. Luke is setting an agenda for Jesus. Now, as I said, In Luke's Gospel, Jesus has come for all, but you are going to hear his preferential option for the poor. Now, when we talk about the poor, and let's get this very clear, when we use the word poor, most people wrap their head literally around the outcome of poverty. And that is very often people who are struggling with material poverty. And this is the mistake we make very often when we hear the Gospels. When we are called to be poor, we often think that it's a blessing not to have things. Now, in that case, this reading would be very hard for the rich, because as you heard, as soon as Jesus says, "Blessed are you who are poor and who are sad," Jesus says, "Woe to you who are rich." Now, it sounds like a bit of a paradox. If I keep saying to you that in Luke's Gospel, Jesus has come for all, then why would Jesus exclude the rich? And so we need to understand, what is Jesus really saying? Is he excluding the rich and only calling us to a kind of material poverty, to remain in poverty? Is that what Jesus is saying? Now, therefore, it makes sense for us to examine this text a little carefully. What did Jesus want to really say? Now, the focus of Jesus' address is to whom? It is not to the apostles. It is to the disciples, and therefore by extension to you and me. So I want you to imagine that Jesus is talking to all of us. This is not only for the disciples at that time, it is for all of us. Now, these disciples, whether it is you or me or those at that time, were people who chose to follow Jesus freely. And they make a choice, as we do, of accepting Jesus freely. See, when we were born, we were baptized and brought into the faith. We call this baptism by convention. My grandfather was baptized, my father was baptized, I got baptized, I had no choice. Even if I wailed and cried during my baptism, that baptism would have taken place. There is no choice in that matter. But when does it become a baptism by conviction? Or when do I really accept the Lord? That is the reason why you will notice that we have delayed confirmation. At one point of time, the first communion and confirmation were given together. Ask your grandparents, they'll tell you they received it together. Earlier in the history of the church, you received your baptism, your Eucharist, and your confirmation all at one time. Now we have delayed it. Why are we delaying it? Because we want disciples to become disciples by conviction. Yeah, I'm still not convinced that we should give 11 standards confirmation, because even then very often it's not by conviction, it is by force. Mommy, daddy, everybody is saying go, 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 get confirmed, or they won't get you married. So because I have to get married someday, I get confirmed. This is not the right attitude. Because Jesus is, and I'll tell you why. Unless you are a disciple by conviction, you're going to find it very hard to accept what I'm going to say next. Because a disciple by conviction can take anything. Otherwise, as I once described Christians by my dear friend Father Larry, we become very sensitive and namby-pamby Christians. You know, Father, my God, Father, you hurt me, Father, my sentiments are hurt, my feelings are hurt, my whole family is hurt. Well, if you're hurt by the good news, then I'm sorry. I can't do anything. I can't change the good news to suit your convenience. So there is a call. Jesus, when he called his disciples in the Gospel of Luke, was calling them to be people by conviction. And that is why you see how hard he is in a way on them. He's not giving them he's not soft peddling discipleship. I always say if Jesus was a salesman, he would have failed in our modern world. Because today if you want to sell anything, I mean, you gloss it over, make it so nice that finally you're giving them a boiled sweet, but you make it sound like as if you're giving them the most precious sweet in the world. And people are waiting in anticipation of this. So it's like very often the iPhones, yeah, they gloss it over. Finally, when you get that phone, it was almost like the other one with 3 more features, but the price is astronomical. So Jesus is asking us to become disciples by conviction. There's no glossing over anything. He gives us the very hard facts as he gave us today. Now, in addressing the disciples and in addressing us, Jesus is therefore asking us, and pay attention to this, to make a choice in our way of life. Make a choice in our way of life. And he's not declaring in that sense, as some people misunderstand, a particular fondness for a social class as blessed. We might think, listening to this, the 4 blesseds and then the 4 woes, that if I am poor, I am blessed. No, the logic doesn't flow, because you can be poor and you can be a terrible Christian. Yeah? And that doesn't mean you're blessed. So we need to understand, what does Jesus really mean by blessedness? Remember, if you look at your Bible, and I told you a few days ago, what was the whole plan of Jesus in the Gospel of Luke? Jesus picked the 12 apostles. Why does he pick 12? He picks 12 because they represented the 12 tribes of Israel. So what was Jesus doing? He was trying to show in Luke's Gospel, what is Luke trying to show us about Jesus? That Jesus is reconstituting Israel. This is the new Israel, not the old Israel. Yeah? Jesus has actually come. Remember a few days ago, Jesus talks about new wine in new wineskins. Yeah? He says you cannot put an old patch onto a new garment. They won't work. Very clearly you can see in Luke's Gospel, Jesus is trying to move us into that direction where we are seen in a new light, in a completely different light. He is reconstituting Israel. Hence the kingdom that Jesus establishes now is not exclusively of the poor. Yeah, Jesus is not saying, let me explain that. Jesus is not saying in this new Israel, I want only poor people. No, he's not saying that. What he's doing is, he's saying, let those who freely choose to be poor come to me. Can you get the difference now? Jesus is reconstituting Israel. He's called his 12 apostles. Now he is not saying, I want only poor people in my kingdom. No, he doesn't say that. He's saying, what I want in my kingdom is those who choose to be freely poor. By myself, I say, Lord, I make those choices to be poor. Once again, what kind of poverty are we talking about? Remember, it could not be physical poverty. Let me explain to you why. If you look in verse 20, it's hardly possible that in verse 20, Jesus, when he's addressing his disciples, was addressing a very affluent group of people. Remember, when Jesus was talking to the people of Palestine, as I've told you before, the people of Palestine were extremely poor. They could barely even have a Sunday dish of some meat. Meat was a rarity for them. So it was not possible that Jesus was talking to affluent people. He was talking to very poor people. And when you talk to poor people, it will be very cruel on the part of Jesus to say, oh, you people are all poor. Imagine Jesus standing there and saying, all of you are poor. Now, blessed are you. Good luck to you. Continue to be poor. It would be a very cruel Jesus. See, poverty, my dear brothers and sisters, is not a virtue. And we should not make a virtue of poverty. When people are struggling, the worst thing you can possibly say to them is, I'll pray for you. Like as if this is some kind of blessing. No, we find a way to eradicate poverty. Our whole lives must be geared and heading towards the eradication of physical poverty. I think poverty is a curse. I don't know whether you know, just to share with you, I do this intermittent fasting. I can tell you I go crazy in the evening when it comes to supper time. My stomach is empty right now. I have to eat tomorrow morning. But I'll tell you the difference with me, and somebody asked me, is intermittent fasting as good as fasting? And I said, no, it isn't, for several reasons. One of the things is, I know tomorrow morning I'm going to get my breakfast. A poor person cannot say that. I know that I will fast for 16 hours and that's it, or 18 hours, and then my breakfast I will get. A poor person cannot say that. And that is why sometimes when we recklessly judge the poor, we are being very nasty. We don't understand poverty. You have to experience poverty and you will never judge a poor person in your life. This is something very cruel. So Jesus, in talking to poor people, is not going to glorify poverty. He was definitely not doing it. So what was Jesus really doing? Now let me explain this to you. You see, as I told you in the Gospel of Luke, who is Luke writing to? He is writing to a Gentile congregation, and many of these Gentiles were Greek-speaking. They were very affluent people. Yes? What is St. Luke trying to communicate? What kind of message is he communicating in the Gospel of his own Gospel of Jesus? He is not trying to show Jesus as making a virtue of physical poverty, as much as Luke is calling his hearers, those who hear, you and me, to make a choice to, listen to this, a choice to live simply so that others may simply live. Jesus is calling us to make a choice to live simply so that others may simply live. Very often, when we make extravagant choices in life, we, in a way, and which we could share with others, we deny others. Okay, now let me give you an example. And again, I want to tell you, as I keep saying, examples are odious. Please, everybody takes examples very personally. Please don't take any examples personally. It's an example, yeah? And if you don't like an example, just throw it out of the window. But let me give you an example. I travel abroad quite often. I'm quite blessed. I feel a little ashamed to say that, but I travel. I'm giving you my own example. And I travel on work, on heritage work, visiting friends, whatever the case may be, I travel. Now, when I land up at that counter at the airport, as luck would have it, as I always say, I'm very blessed in that way. Somebody or the other on the other side of the counter either sees my collar. In some cases, I'm traveling in a country where nobody knows me, but I guess they see the collar, and they must be feeling very sorry for this poor priest who's sitting on an airplane for so long. And then as I'm getting on boarding, I realize that they have bumped me up to business class. Now, I'm very pleased, okay? I must tell you, I must confess, business class is a great joy. But here's the point. Supposing I, Father Warner D'Souza, had enough of money in my life and I chose to travel by business class. Now, it's my choice. Some may argue and say, well, Father, what you do with your money is your problem. But here's the point that Jesus is making. He's saying, if you live simply, because there's a huge difference between a business class ticket and an economy ticket. He says, if you live simply, yeah, then somebody with that same money can simply live. After all, traveling in from here to America is a 18-hour journey. What is it, 12 plus 4, okay, whatever. I think it's a 16-hour journey, even if you fly non-stop, okay. How cumbersome is a 16-hour journey? How cumbersome? How cumbersome? And very often, we have forgotten in our lives our struggle. Many of us came from backgrounds where we struggled. One of the things I keep telling people in this world is never forget where you came from. Never forget. I have seen some tremendously affluent people who have never forgotten where they've come from. And they donate so much of their money to the poor. They care for others. Even if you don't have money to give others so that they may simply live, treat people very often with love and respect. Treat your domestic help with love and respect. I've been making a case very often to pay your domestics these days, even if they're not working, unless, of course, you've lost your salary, lost your job, whatever. Even if you're getting half your salary, you can give your domestic help half your salary. Give people, yeah, if you ever have the chance to go to a barber, remember that they had no employment for 5 months. It's all right if you don't ask for the change back. Yeah? It's all right if you give the auto rickshaw driver another, $30. You're not going to die. I often think sometimes our standards of giving are very weird. If you go to a 5-star restaurant, we will tip that fellow about $400 because we want everybody to think well of ourselves. That auto rickshaw driver, that 25 paisa also we'll say give back. Yeah? The other thing I find very strange we do is we'll go to a supermarket and whatever is written on the label, we'll pay. You don't go to the counter of the supermarket and say 50 paisa kam kar do. But you go to that bhaji wala and you'll start haggling with him. You say, thoda kothmir de do, thoda mirchi de do, iska ye kam kar do. I mean, what is wrong with us? See, this is the point. We deprive other people from even living by the choices we make. And some rich person or some other person, we will, gloss over it and give them a lot of things. And this is the point that Jesus is making. He is not asking us, and understand this very clearly, he's not saying the rich are condemned. He's not saying the poor are blessed. What is Jesus saying? Can you choose, because you chose to be my disciples, says Jesus. If you chose to be my disciples, can you choose to live simply? If you get a gift, and even sometimes if it's an expensive gift, perhaps you may feel motivated to give it to somebody else. If you need it, please use it. See, make a distinction in your life between needs and wants. Yeah? You may want everything, you don't need everything. It's a very simple thing. I not jokingly, but also seriously, I always give this example. How many saris or how many pants or how many t-shirts do you need in this world? This pandemic has taught me something very nice. I've been living in the same clothes for practically the same. So same white t-shirt and the same black banyan and the same black pant, and I'm very happy for the last 5 months. I'm getting in and getting out. Of course, they're washed. I don't think I don't wash them. But really, do I need 40 other clothes? Do I need it? When do we need it? When we want to show the whole world every day I want to wear a different thing. This becomes wants. It doesn't become needs. Our needs, really, our lives, are very simple. The other day somebody was telling me, Father, I'm going to get you one of those ear pods. I said, I'll take it and throw it into the dustbin. I am sending an Apple ear pod. I said, I'll throw it in the dustbin. Yeah, the person who's saying this to me will be laughing. I said, I'll throw it in the dustbin. And I said it out of a sense of, like, unless I said I'll throw it into the dustbin, I knew he would send it to me. I knew it. So I said, I'll really throw it in the dustbin. I don't want it. Yeah, I said, bad enough, these 3 gadgets that I have are driving me crazy. Make a distinction between needs and wants. Yeah, make a distinction between needs and wants. So what is Jesus really saying? The awareness to live simply, to such a call, to be sensitive to those who suffer, who mourn, when we stand for those who are excluded, all this, when we do this, we live that blessedness. You know, when Jesus really, he hails our free choice. When we freely make that choice to live simply, Jesus hails us, and that's when he uses the word blessed. Now you'll understand. When I make that decision each time to say, I want to live simply so that others may simply live, Jesus says to us, blessed are you. When I reach out from my selfishness to empathize with somebody who mourns, Jesus says, blessed are you. It's not, don't misunderstand today's gospel that you have to be morose and miserable. Yeah? If you live that life by choice, good luck to you. But that's not the mandate of Jesus. I can live simply and be joyful. The word blessed very often is misunderstood as some sort of pie in the sky when you die. You know? Jesus, if I'm blessed, blessed are you because in heaven you will get a pie in the sky when you die. No. The word blessed in Greek is makarios. You know what it really means? It's congratulations. So, every time you and I choose to live simply, Jesus says to us, makarios. Blessed are you. How blessed are you? Just take a moment, my dear brothers and sisters, to ask yourself in this, how can I live simply? And don't take a decision for the rest of your life because you'll fail by tomorrow morning. Just ask yourself, till tomorrow evening, what can I do to live simply?